What was your biggest holy crap I missed all of the signs moment? In college, a girl in a few of my classes asked if she could come over and do some laundry because the dorm washer dryer were down. Then maybe do some calculus while we were waiting. She came over, forgot her laundry basket, forgot all of her calculus book's notes, and didn't really have a plan of why she was there. She suggested she could wash the clothes she was wearing, but all my clothes were too big to fit her while those were getting washed. So we played with my guinea pig for a while and tried both using my calc book before she ended up just going home. Took me almost 2 years before a different girlfriend pointed out how dense I was. She suggested she could wash the clothes she was wearing. Okay, even I would probably pick up on that one. Snapchatted me a photo of her laying in bed with the caption, "I really want to cuddle. I just told her to use a pillow." In my teens I worked with two middle-aged women who lived together and each referred to the other as her partner. I assumed they had an outside business together. About 5 years later I realized that they were, and still are, a couple. In my defense, I'm really dumb. My auntie is gay. She has lived with her partner all my life. I live in a country where women can't marry, so they have different surnames. Also, one looks nothing like my family and all our family look pretty similar. Oh, and the house was full of pro-gay rights stuff. Although I had two aunties until I was 18. I ended up past my exit on the freeway. Frick me, I did that on Thursday. I was daydreaming about another exit, no joke. The time I went for a walk in Poland. The map said it was a gentle green route, but I missed all the warning and turning signs and accidentally got onto a serious hiking trail up in mountains. Jeans, trainers and a t-shirt on. 4 hours later I finally encountered two other people, but they barely spoke English and were in full kit. I asked if there was a cafe nearby to get a drink, but it was miles away. In fact, it was miles away back in Poland. I'd accidentally hiked my way into Slovakia. And that, kids, is the story of how your father briefly went to Slovakia without a passport. Slovakia and Poland are both Schengen-pact countries, so you wouldn't need a passport to travel between them anyway. In high school, guy gave me a dozen red roses and said, "These are for you, from me." I thought he was just being friendly. A girl asked me if I wanted to go inside and grind. I just didn't know what to say. Thought she was being friendly since we just danced for the past hour. My friend sucked my middle finger all the way down while maintaining eye contact and invited me to go home with her to watch a horror movie. Very few moments later, I said I was going home because I didn't like horror movies. Without a question, my best friend struggled with alcohol. It's been 7 years since his death and still 7 years later I rethink those last few weeks he was with us and the behavior he was displaying. All the signs were there and I knew it was off, but he always reassured me he was good. The night he drank himself to death I spoke to him for a single minute on the phone hours before he died. He was in high spirits. I don't think high spirits is the best way to describe it. Real talk though, I'm so sorry for your loss. You did all you could have done. I vaguely knew this one girl for years but never talked to her. One day I added her on MySpace and we became friends right away and talked all day. We didn't necessarily flirt with each other, but we talked about sex and eventually she wanted us to start calling each other babe. I shut it down because it seemed weird since we weren't a couple. We hung out at her house once and wrestled around in pitch black darkness and I ended up pinning her to the bed. We stayed in that position for a few seconds before I got up and said we should go back to the living room. Another time she DVR'd a movie and set it 30 minutes before start time and a Cinemax porno was on. She wanted us to watch it together but I left. She sent me pictures of her in her bra and panties and asked what I thought. I told her the bra was too big. A coworker I had a big crush on invited me multiple times to go work out with him and to go to some parties, hugged me for no reason, told me that he's really happy to see me multiple times, jokingly grabbed my hips while he was sitting in front of me, played with my hands, smiled like a dork and tried to catch my eye when a coworker joked we should frick. I was so shy and anxious that I aborted all these signs. Convinced myself it was just friendly. Now he has a girlfriend, and I look back and I'm just dang. Okay, there is missing signs and there is being physically buried under a truck carrying road signs by a driver that only speaks ASL while signs is on TV. I still can't completely relate to you. I hung out regularly with the sorority girl. She was quite attractive. I knew she had a boyfriend, so I didn't really try anything. However, she always agreed to go on brunch dates and one-on-one hangouts with me. She typically paid for my food, and she even brought me a cake she baked herself. She added me on Snapchat and sent me a lot of random stuff. At some point, she'd regularly ask me to do things with her. For example, she'd say, "Let's go on a jog by the ocean." Me: "I already went to the gym today. Sorry." Her: "Let's go exploring at night." Me: "I'm tired. Maybe some other time." Her: "Let's study together." Me: "I find studying alone more efficient." Oops. In retrospect, this was completely obvious. Even more recently, a similar thing happened. I hung out with this girl every day. We'd go to the beach and talk until 2 AM. I slept over at her place probably 3 times every week. She talked to me about every part of her life. Recently, she started to randomly ignore me, and that's when I was like, oh crap, she was actually into me. I knew she had a boyfriend. Signs are kinda meaningless unless you wanna be a home wrecker. When I was about 16, I was hanging out at my girlfriend at the time's place and she was all over me. Her dad wasn't home, so just us. She snuggled up to me and told a story about how she was on a beach the previous day and saw a guy groping his GF. She even put my hand on her thigh as she did. So, obviously, I just shrugged it all off and started talking about new insects I learned about that morning. Obviously. When I was in HS, I was with a group of friends, all of us in a hot tub. This really cute girl, wearing a string bikini, sat in my lap, put her arms around my neck, and within 5 minutes, everyone else left the hot tub to go inside. She had told all of her friends that she wanted to bang me and to leave when she did this. What do I do? Maybe we should go inside with everyone else. This is the first one to actually make me say or no out loud. My godmother is a lesbian. Since I was 6 years old, she had a rainbow ribbon attached to the name tag she wore at church. When I was 15, she moved in with a woman, in the same room, in the same bed, and frequently talked about cuddling with her. I don't know how I didn't connect the dots. Maybe it's because I'm from Indiana. Recently went through old text messages from the phone I had in high school. A girl I was attracted to sent me messages and photos that clearly show she was interested in me. I was completely clueless and never knew until now. This thread is great. I have a pretty severe crush on someone I know but don't want him to know. We're both happily married to other people, but I get crushes super easily, always have, and it's freaking annoying. I always worried that it was obvious, but reading through all this, I'm now confident that even if I was obvious, no one would have picked up on it. My best friend came over one day when my family wasn't home. She dropped her bag and condom fell out. She said oops with a smirk. Later that day we were watching a movie in bed and she told me I bought new lingerie. Would you like to see? I, of course in the most gentleman manner, told her no. She got pee at me and left the house. After about 2 days it hit me that she wanted sexy time. Rip past me. Girl I had a crush on in high school asked if I was going to a dance because she had a dress she wanted to wear. I was like, oh no, I'm going to a rave that night instead. Cut like 2 years later and me slamming my head into a desk when I realized she was asking me to that dance. Rave was probably the better choice tbh. My father's death. He had high cholesterol, high glucose, high blood pressure. One day he had a dot of blood in his left eye. 2 days later he had a heart attack. He never cared, really, but I should have done something. I'll never forgive myself. It's okay bud. 3. I was dating a guy in high school. He was good looking, captain of the soccer team, and did very well academically. Looking back, he was also very clearly gay. I didn't notice it at the time though. I was raised in a pretty sheltered Jewish family. I was under the impression that gay guys were all super feminine and the other signs went completely over my head. He really liked to watch movies with hot lead male actors. He would say things like, "He's so hot." Just kidding. Gotcha. He never wanted to take things any further than kissing. Living La Vida Loca came out when we were freshmen in high school and he was obsessed with Ricky Martin and was even more obsessed with his sexuality. He was always tell me that Ricky Martin was gay and we would get into arguments about it. He loved that dang song. He was also way more concerned about his looks than mine. All little things, but together they scream gay. Fast forward many years later and we are both married to great guys. I am also going to be a surrogate for him and his partner, and I hope to be pregnant in August with their first baby. To be fair, Living La Vida Loca is a hell of a good song. I was 5 when that came out and would hear it on radio. The drummer from one of my bands is a lesbian. She also had a bit of a nasty breakup a few months back. A couple of weeks ago I drove up to a gig with one of our female classmates. After the show, everyone was saying their goodbyes and heading off. My friend turned to say goodbye and I was like, dude, I'm your ride home, haha. What are you saying goodbye for? My friend, who was arm in arm with our drummer, says she's gonna catch a ride home with her. I just stood there for a few seconds wondering why on earth she would be catching a ride with our drummer when they lived in completely opposite directions, until my guitarist elbowed me in the ribs. A girl I knew about 11 or 12 years ago was into me. I just realized this a few months, maybe a year, ago. I was just pondering one day about the women I had met before my wife and this girl, and I talked a lot but it never went anywhere. I think it was because I had just broken up with a fairly serious girlfriend and was still a little hung up on her. Maybe it's just rose-tinted memories, but I think it was just me being too stupid to see what was going on. Oh god, I was confused at first and then horrified the further I read, because I saw the beginning as a girl I knew who was 11 or 12 was into me. At the beach when I was 22, sitting in hotel hot tub with cooler full of beer and my 2 buds at 2 AM when the bar's close. Throng of girls start walking past. 4 join us and start drinking our beer. Beer runs out. Girls go get more. Beer runs out. My bud runs for more. Everyone talking and flirting and having a blast. Hottie in bikini beside me starts asking me tons of questions. Hottie in bikini asks me to take a walk with her on the beach at 3 AM. Drunk me is having such a blast cracking jokes and showing off that I failed to realize she wanted to have sex on the beach. Something sandy vagina. So, this is a story of how I was probably almost molested and never realized it until about 15 years later. We had neighbors up the street, and when I was a kid, their son, probably teenage, I honestly don't remember, would sometimes come and babysit or keep an eye on me while my parents were out. Not a big deal or a formal thing, but just someone to keep an eye on an 8-year-old for a few minutes. Well, at some point I was telling him about a club that my friends and I from school had, and he started talking about the cooler older kid clubs there were, one of which apparently involved tickling each other's butts. I was kinda weirded out by it, but eventually he talked me into tickling his. Give me a break. I was really young and not even remotely aware of sexuality, while he was still dressed. As a warm-up sort of thing. I must have mentioned something to my parents about it at some point, because after that I never saw the kid again. It was the kind of thing I randomly remembered like 15 years later during a slow night at work, and realized that if I hadn't said anything or had been just a bit more gullible, I might have had an entirely different childhood. So for any younger Redditors out there, if you've got a neighbor or friend or family member that wants you to do something that feels weird or uncomfortable, just mention it to your parents. It might be nothing, or might save your life without realizing it. That was not your fault. There's nothing to give you a break over. I didn't want to believe my son was stealing from his job at the highway department, but when I got home all the signs were there. Have your good goddamned up vote. When I found out my mother was cheating on my dad, suddenly, her trips to the grocery store from which she returned hours later with no groceries made a lot more sense. Also, when she would delete all of her text conversations before letting me borrow her phone to make a call. And when she got drunk one night and told me she went golfing with my gym teacher. LMAO, I just realized that I could write a book with the multitude of signs I missed. That would be a boon. The fact that, in high school, I completely missed all the now obvious evidence that one of my best female friends really liked me as more than a friend. Had I known, I wouldn't have pined over the shallow, superficial person I crushed on and could have had a really awesome girlfriend. But alas, I'm 24 and who really gives a crap now? I've met other people since then and I've been happy with them. I had this 1984 Nissan 200 SX when I was in high school. Great car, had a huge hatchback, I had a friend I would drive to school fairly regularly, and she was friends with this straight up gorgeous girl. One day, my friend and her friend were catching a ride home from school. As we get out to my car, her hot friend looks me dead in the eye and says, "Whoa, that trunk is huge. 2 people could totally frick back there." Huh, I guess so. Dude, what the frick were you thinking? When she called up my friends to tell that we were gonna frick, and I laughed it off. Stop posting this question please, I everett him. TL. DR. Dude on Tinder went from normal to batshit in the span of about 3 or 4 weeks. I met a guy on Tinder. We hit it off as friends, though I wanted more. We talked for a couple months, on and off, when suddenly he started bitching to me about other girls from Tinder. I'm like, okay, that's whatever. I'm a good friend and listened. Then he started flirting. I was cool with it, because it's not like he was, or is, unattractive. Within the span of 3 days, he has taken to calling me babe despite me repeatedly saying that nickname makes me uncomfortable. Started joking about domestic abuse and smacking me for saying that, and pointedly ignoring MT requests to stop that. Still, I didn't notice the red flags. I just took this stuff in stride as this guy's sense of humor. He convinces me to get a Snapchat, which I had never used before. He texts and calls me constantly, for sometimes upwards of an hour or longer per call. I saw it as cute, rather than weird. Mind you, this is still only about 4 days into him even showing interest in me. Few days later, he's out of state for his dad's surgery, and he gets blackout drunk with some friends. Nearly kills a guy, choked him nearly to death. Around this time, he starts being possessive. Why aren't you responding to my texts? Why aren't you calling me? Why did you change your Tinder profile? Don't you have me? Mind you, we haven't even met in person or gone on a date. We've video chatted a couple times, texted a lot, and were friends on Facebook. He starts talking about how I need to save money for us and our future, and I still don't get creeped out. He makes jokes about slapping me and whatever outside of the bedroom and knowing I'll like it, because I'm into BDSM. Not how it works. Folks, what finally did it for me was when he told me he had a dream about killing a bunch of people. Guy had issues, possibly from his time in the armed forces, but as someone who has been in more than one abusive relationship, I had to freaking disappear. I removed him on Snapchat, turned off his notifications for Facebook, and changed my phone number. I ignored anything he tagged me in on Facebook, and let time pass. I did all of this over the course of about a week and a half. Dude's in IT and has extensive military training. There's no doubt in my mind he could easily find where I live. There are pictures of my house on Facebook, and most selfies are geolocated these days. I ghosted him just about a month ago, and I'm living in constant fear that he's gonna come to my house and shoot me and all my housemates. I dunno man. That's not something you end with a. I never realized that 2 of my guy friends had a crush on me. They outed each other after graduation high school, and I was left wondering if I really had guy friends or just dudes trying to date frick me. A good percentage is guys who enjoy the company but definitely wouldn't mind fricking. Working at a small legal firm as a general office hand. Doing reception relief behind this big desk which I can hardly see over. Important client comes through the elevator. He's struggling to make it to the reception desk. Manages to get there. I ask him who he was, then get him to take a seat. He asks where the seats are. I point just over there. He says lefts and rights help. What the heck? I stand up only to see him holding onto lead holder for his seeing eye dog. Yes, I'm an idiot. In high school this model was always really nice to me, and at some point she called us prof work vernoek maatjes. It's Dutch and means something like fricking up exams buddies. Thing was she was only getting top scores. Never saw that sign until a couple years later. God dang. During high school I had this group of friends I would spend my whole time with. We were like 4-5 boys and 2 girls. One day one of said girls just takes my calculator during recess and writes "I love you," her name, on the notepad program. As I came back I was told that she wrote something on there. Read it and was like, why the frick does she do this? Does she just want everybody else to think I'm in love with her? So back then I thought it was a joke which should make me look like I wrote it on my calculator. After me ignoring this, she became very rude to me and just a dong overall as soon as I got involved. Looking back, maybe not my smartest moment. You missed the hint, but the fact that she became a dong to you and rude just because you didn't accept her offer, albeit you missed the sign, makes her sound like a bee because she didn't get what she wanted. Took a girl to the Marine Corps ball, had a magical time, was driving her back to her car when she told me she wished the night didn't have to end. So I took her to Waffle House. Didn't figure it out for 2 weeks. She wouldn't return my calls after that. Met my wife about a month later, so it all worked out. Hey man, nothing wrong with waffles. You made the right call. My mom tells me she missed all the signs while I was growing up. I went from this happy, bubbly 5-year-old to this cold and sad 5-year-old. She thought I might have just been going through a phase. I cried all the time. If someone moved too quickly or raised a hand, I flinched. If someone yelled, I got scared. She noticed that I complained about my female parts hurting but thought it might just be some kind of infection. She noticed that I was throwing my panties away because they had holes in them. She thought I was just played rough and ripped them. She noticed that my pets went missing and that I cried about them but wouldn't tell her what happened. We lived on a busy street. They must have been hit by cars or ran off or something. I kept everything quiet for many years. I finally told her when I was a preteen. A family member had been sneaking into our house in the middle of the night and doing things. Or he would find me playing in the yard and would abduct me by picking me up and carrying me to the fields behind our house. Or if I stayed at my grandmother's house, he had free reign over me and would make me do what he wanted while pointing a gun at my head. He killed my pets in front of me. He tortured me. My mom said, when I started telling her, the pieces started falling into place. It was a horrifying epiphany. All those little things added up to holy crap. My daughter has been going through this for years and I never knew she and my dad both broke down and cried. Oh my god, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Was making out with a girl. Friend zoned her. Somehow I didn't figure out that it was unusual for friends to be kissing. So I didn't go for the relationship. Damn it. I do this too. I guess this girl is just super free-spirited and does this kind of stuff with her friends. Third date with a girl. She invited me over her house. When her roommates were not home, she took me up to her room to watch Netflix. In her bed, in her gown, cuddling. I didn't connect it. Was like 5 years ago and was a virgin at the time and just didn't get it. Holy crap, LMAO. Looking back, I'm just shaking my head. Frick's sake. One of my fellow gay friends was over to hang out with me a year or so ago and he kept talking about my bed and how much he wanted to be in my bed. I just thought he was tired. When Billy's smoking hot mom would flirt with me. One July day when Billy was out of state to live with his dad for the summer, I ran into her at a convenience store and she asked me to come over to take care of Billy's turtle and winked at me. Dumb but me didn't want to have to clean a turtle tank. Later that summer another friend of mine said he was banging her all summer. I had an uncle who lived with another man, moved several times together, including across states, and even adopted a daughter together. I didn't realize they were more than roommates until I saw a newspaper article listing him as the first openly gay man in his profession. When I tried to buy a ticket for the latest M. Night Shyamalan movie, but it was late 2002 and it was already on its way to VHS DVD. I was constantly getting into fights with my girlfriend and could not figure out why. I say something, she gets irrationally upset and starts pouting. Shortly after our breakup, a friend mentions how weird it was for me to have had a GF who doesn't understand sarcasm. Suddenly everything fell into place. Literally happened 3 days ago. It was prom and the first hint I should have gotten was one of my friends, F, insisted that we go to prom together. Me being oblivious thought that that would be fun to go with a friend, and that I should bring another friend, more the merrier. Anyways, she reluctantly agreed to let other friend come. As long as I dropped him off at his house before taking her back home. I was the only one who could drive. Now at this point I thought that she only wanted that to say goodbye as she is moving within the next month, and thus may have been the last time we saw each other, and I started thinking that she had a sort of goodbye present for me. So in prom itself I was staying back being the introvert that I am when she runs up to me and says, I wanted you to drop him off first for a reason you know. Come out and dance. Of course that confirmed the gift idea in my mind and I panicked because I didn't have anything for her. Now, immediately after dropping other friend off at his house, she grabs my leg and tells me to find an empty street and then park. Now I thought I was just going to get pranks and rolled my eyes and went with it. Come to the dark street. I stop the car and she says, "You super nerdy teen. How oblivious are you?" and then grabbed my leg. I was confused until she started kissing me and then it all clicked. Prom party 4/10. Too loud. Drive home 100/10. Good times. Valentine's Day in 2013 when I signed my divorce papers and watched my wife drive away in my car with my son and my dog. I should have seen that marriage doing down the tubes long before it started, but I was young and stupid in the military. There were so many flags. More flags than NATO. My maternal grandmother recently passed away and I was talking to my mom about it when she said her mother had passed unexpectedly. But then, as time has progressed, she realized it wasn't as unexpected as she'd thought. My grandmother had been in and out of the hospital multiple times over the past 2-3 years. Shortly before her passing she was put on oxygen. And the most obvious tell that my mom didn't realize until recently, over the past year, my grandmother started randomly giving my mother some items my mother had given my grandmother as gifts over the years. Looking back, my mom said she thinks my grandmother knew she was dying and that was her way of preparing the family. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.